Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Code with Lilly Code. I'm Lilly Code. We're doing the 100 Days of Code challenge, and we're here on day 44 today. That's a nice number for you. Day 44. So we're getting stuck in here now, and we're looking at forms at the moment and form validation. So let's continue. We're getting on absolutely swingingly, very fantastically. So great. Thank you for joining me yet again. I really appreciate it. And let's get learning. Okay. Okay, so we're adding a new form is valid. Let's just fire up our project real quick. This will only take a second. So I'll CD into code into 01. CD into code. First of all, we need to CD into 16. 16 is the project folder that we're in. Then I think code. Yes, then 01. Then we just want to do npm start. 16 code 16 cd 16 ls. Let's see what's in here. Cd code. Okay, cd. Did I do like the wrong? What was I doing? Can you not do like a forward slash or what's going on there? I don't know. So then we'll do npm start. Strange. Early in the morning. I'm not sure what happened there. Anyway, so what we're going to do is add a new state management piece. So I'm actually going to Google use state very quickly as well, just to say, what is this thing? When you're creating a use state, it's a use state object that you're creating. Because I was calling it a variable for the first half. This thing here, I was calling this a variable and this the function. So use state React, just so we have got the right terminology. We're learning every day here. It's great. Use React, use state, terminology. That's actually a great idea for a blog post or something. If I have the question, other people have the question. And that's what we often find. Here we go. Let's just have a quick look at this blog. Which we could just go to the, you pass the initial state and it returns a variable with the current state and another function to update this value. There you go. So it is a variable. Okay, great. Well, this guy is just some guy, isn't he? Which I presume this guy, let's get his name and give him props for reading his stuff. Esteban Herrera, thank you so much at LogRocket. Front end monitoring. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Esteban Herrera. Family man, love it. Good man. Fantastic. Say hello to your family. Oh, Lord. Why not, why not? So then we'll just go to the official React documentation. So React, that should pull it up for us there. React.js, here we go. Using the state hook. Hooks are a new addition in React 16.8. So great I came in at this stage because I actually really get the use state hooks and I understand the other hooks. So I'm happy I came in to learning React when the hooks were already in place, because although if I knew all the other stuff and then it was just hooks to learn, well then I would have just learned hooks. But I feel like, when JavaScript came in and then ES6 came in, like learning those new rules was a bit tricky because you already knew the old rules. So trying to learn the new rules, and like when I first came into JavaScript, ES6 was already there, but like people were still referring to it as this new thing and still using a lot of the old practices. Whereas now I find that the ESX practices are very much at the forefront of JavaScript coding. They're integrated very well now, whereas that didn't feel like the case before. So it was like this new thing I had to learn, and it just felt a bit alien. Whereas now I've come into React at the base where, okay, they have this complex new stuff in already, and it's all just, this is what React is. So, you know, I don't need to think, oh, it's a new thing I need to learn, which in programming, there's always going to be a new thing to learn. So get that mindset out of your head straight away and embrace the learning and think, this is great. I get to learn all the time. I'm keeping the old being alive, you know, practicing Sudoku, crosswords, do a bit of coding. So it's fantastic, really. And you're just learning. It's great. It is great. So we come in here now. If you have used classes before in React, okay. The state starts as start count at 0, count assigned the value of 0, and we increment state count when the user clicks a button by calling this.setState. Yeah. What is a hook? Okay. Now our new example uses useState. It lets you hook into React features. For example, useState is a hook that lets you add React state to function components. We'll learn more on hooks later, or other hooks later. When would I use a hook? If you write a function and realize you need to add some state to it, previously you had to convert it to a class. Okay. Now you can use a hook inside the existing function component. We're going to do that now. Okay. There are some special rules about when you can and can't use hooks. Yes, I did know this. Max has been bringing this up, and I have been communicating this during the entire 100 Days series. So in a class, this is good actually. I'm just getting some, you know, I've only started to use the docs really more in the last year or two, like 2-3 years. I mean, ever since I started programming, I've been coming to the docs, but they didn't make much sense in the first year. The second year, I'd look and I might pick out something. The third year, you know, I started using them, and then now this year they're invaluable. They are just invaluable to me. So it's a slow progression, or at least it was for me. I think that this can be a bit confusing. You know, when you're just following tutorials and you're getting to grips with it and everyone's saying, use the docs are the best. You know, the official docs, they know what's going on. And then you come to them and you're like, bah, what is this? Because it can sort of be abstract. Examples, I know MDN, they sort of felt very abstract to me, the examples that they gave. So all in time, things come together. Tip, tip, tap, and you will find your way eventually, you know. So in a class, we initialize the count state to 0 by setting this.state to count 0 in the constructor. Okay. In a function, we have no this, so we can't assign a read this.state. Instead, we use the useState exactly hook directly inside our component. So here we go. We've imported React and useState from React because this is where we're getting this functionality from. Then we have our example, and in our example function, we are declaring a new state variable, which we'll call count. Okay, so it's a new state variable. That's great. So we have our term, and we've got it from the official docs and from our friend who I mentioned earlier on, which I'll actually include that article for us because it was a good article. So, well, from the little glimpse I had of it, and I'll include this page as well because, you know, so you can open it up and read it yourself. I'm after finding this very, very helpful. I think the React documentation is brilliant as well. I really do. Whether it's because I finally have a bit more understanding of coding and just the way now I can sort of read the MDN docs way better and I get a lot more information from them. Or maybe I think that the React docs, if you're starting with React, I just think that they're great documentation. I really do. I remember the Angular documentation being good as well. Very good, very good. I'm not saying either one is better nor worse, but I feel like I'm using the React documentation more, at least. I'm using it more, you know. And maybe that's just down to, you know, learning and growing myself, because you can't get better information than from the people who are writing the official documentation themselves. And with Angular, I just remember spending a lot of time on Stack Overflow, like a lot. So probably just didn't have that level of experience up as much when I was first learning Angular. It was my first framework, so I didn't have that level of experience. And yeah. So look, guys, it's all learning. Keep going. Don't be disheartened. Have faith that you can do it, because I know you can. And just take that, stick it right in your brain when you're having a hard day. Lily said I can, because I know you can. So it's all practice. There's nothing special about me. Well, everything is special about me, just in the same way everything is special about you. You know, and nothing is special about me, and nothing is special about any of us as well. We're all here doing our bit, and the only reason I'm able to do this stuff is because I practiced it. That's it. So we can all put in the time if we want to and learn this skill, okay? I'll stop waffling now, but I feel like these are the most important things I want to communicate on my channel. So I'm sorry if I go off on tangents to, you know, say all this stuff and you're like, oh, get on with the thing, will you? So please do let me know in the comments if I'm way too much of a waffler. But this is the key information for me, I think. You can get coding tutorials anywhere, but who is actually going to tell you the bare bones? This stuff is easy. It's easy. You just have to practice it. And it takes years, 2 years, to stop feeling difficult. Or, you know, like there'll be a 2-year period where you're, and then in the 3rd year, at least in my experience, I started to relax into it. And only now in the 4th year am I like, I really enjoy this. This is great. So I'm learning. My brain feels alive. I'm using my logical brain. I'm using my creative brain. This is firing things up in my brain, and I'm enjoying it, you know. Whereas there was lots of moments of panic, self-doubt. You know, there was. In year 3, in year 2 and year 1, that increased as we went back through the year. So year 1, I was a panicking mess, you know. I changed careers from a career in science. I was very panicky whether or not I had made the right decision, going for one particular salary down to another one, completely different one, barely able to, you know, live life really. And when I first started programming, I was given a introductory wage, which is completely understandable, but I was abroad and just questioning all of my life choices. But you have to persevere, you know. There is no other option. You made a decision. The decision was to change career. Now I'm in this little boat that's, the holes are in the boat, and I have a little bucket and I'm just scooping the water out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. But I knew if I kept on scooping, soon enough I'd see land. You know, you just have to keep persevering. And if you have a friend, or, you know, try and find a friend or somebody who can support you during that time. Like, go to a coding meetup group, speak to other coders. They'll encourage you that really it's a learning period, and, you know, you just need to stick with it. Or at least that's certainly what I would be saying to other coders. Go to like just a local support group, you know. Just get general support. It doesn't even have to be with regards to coding. I was very, 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 very lucky that I had my father who I could give a ring to when I was abroad and feeling like, have I made the wrong decision? And he would just tell me, Lily, will you ever stop? You are able. You just keep going. You're able to do this. And then that'd give me the little bit of fuel in my tank that I'd need to go home and study for 2 hours. So, I mean, it's not going to come easy. But then it all feels so easy and it's so worth it. Just practice, you know. I mean, sometimes practice doesn't feel easy. But what's practice? Only a little bit of what's that word? Keeping yourself on track. Doing the things you've promised yourself you would do. And wanting to better yourself and realising that putting in the time is so valuable. And so just putting in the time as a result of that. Pick whatever time you can manage every day. I always did an hour, and in the beginning it ended up being more than an hour. So just to give you an idea of how long this skill actually takes to learn. You know, if you're only going to do 10 minutes every day, well, when do you want to be proficient in 5 years? Do you know, when would you like to get a job in this, start getting paid in this? So pick a time and dedicate your time to that every single day without fail, as much as you possibly can. Obviously there are some caveats, which is why something like this challenge is a great idea, because you're just stuck in the zone. I think that's enough waffle out of me. I just really want to communicate that you are all capable of learning this, and that, you know, it's just a bit of practice, and you all have my backing. And any questions at all that you have, please do leave them for me. You know, you have my email in the description box. You can leave a comment. You know, I'm here to help you guys. I'm here to make this journey easier for you, to be that supportive voice for you. Because even with my dad there was days where I questioned myself, and now I realise I should have just had faith the whole time. I should have never doubted my abilities, not for 1 second. And it's a learning curve. Learning something, you know, that has this air of difficulty, even though it's not difficult, you just need to practice it. You know, it just takes time for this crazy language to click in your brain. But once it clicks, like, you start reading it, and I can't wait for the day where I can just read this like English, and I'm like, oh yeah, you've got like something missing over there. You know, you just keep getting better and better. Now at the moment I have to like sit and process the language, but that's okay. You know, before I was like, what is this language? So you keep getting better and better and better. And yeah, so just have faith in yourself, and know that if you have any questions, you can ask me, and please do, because that's literally what I'm here for. So thanks for watching, guys. You know, I mean it. So anyway, now we'll get back onto the code. So yeah, so first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to set a validity state on this form, and then we're also going to use effect in order to use this validity state. So just checking, just drinking, and just coding. So const, we'll open up our brackets, and in here we will say form is valid. I really want to format this, but there's no time for that right now. In work, when we have these, there's always a gap either side, and my autosaver, anyway, look, I'm going to stop talking, but I'd like to format it the same as it's formatted in work, just so my brain is totally in sync. Set form, even though this isn't really going to mess with your brain, is it? Just, why did I go on that big spiel? Like, it clearly would have just been handier if it was the same visually, because it made me think of all that. Anyway, so use state, and this is going to be a use state hook, which we've just found out is creating a variable and a function to update that variable, and then we pass in. So I have my terminology correct. It is not an object, which I was started to call it yesterday, even though I'd been calling it a variable the whole time, because it is a variable. And then we pass in an initial state in this case, and we want to use false here. So then we're going to use effect as well. Okay. This makes perfect sense, yeah. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do now here in this use effect is check if the different things are valid. And that's what we want to do in the use effect. And then set the form is valid in the case that it's valid, you know. So what this is saying is if entered name is valid, what entered name is valid is checking that the entered name was not just an empty string, then this will be true. So if this is true, it will come into this if block, and it will set form is valid. So now we have another state that sets the form to valid. So this can be true now. Perfecto selecto, and then we'll leave that for the moment. Da-da-da-da. And then we'll give it an else, open up our curly brackets, and in here we can say set form is valid to false. And what we could do as well, if we had, say, other dependencies, so like entered age is valid, we could add that in here to make sure that all of those dependencies that we're relying on for this form are indeed valid, and set a state then to track this, to keep track on whether or not it was valid. So here's entered age is valid, and then we would add it down to the dependencies array as well. So we don't have an entered age is valid, just to show you that that is possible. We can add multiple dependencies and multiple conditions to an if statement and to this dependency array. So then I'll save, and let's see what's going down around the town. Entered age is valid. Alright, yes, we got rid of that. So come on, you're always one behind me, compiler. Not so sure what's going on with you, but you've got a speed up over there. And then we'll submit. Perfect. And then what if we don't give a valid name? What happens then? Is it insane? Oh, fantastic. So I've cleared the name. This means, and let's actually just do a few spaces, because what this should do is come in here, check if the entered name is valid, which is going to trim out all that white space and just return a blank a string with no characters, an empty string. And then it's saying if entered name dot trim is not equal to empty string. Well, it is not equal to empty string. If entered name dot trim is not equal to empty string, then this would evaluate to true, but it is equal to empty string, so that will equal to false, and therefore we get this message. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Yes, so let's try that again, because we didn't submit there. So we'll just do space. Okay, so even when you click out, it tells you that warning, so that's great. So what, because it's on untouched as well, and then if we submit, perfecto selecto. And then what about if we come in here and type in the name and then submit? Great, we don't get an error. That's fantastic. We've set up the validation state management on this form now. And what we could actually do as well, rather than allowing people to submit in the case that the form isn't valid, so like this, you know, we can see that the form is not valid, but yet we can still click the submit button. So if I clear everything, alright, well, I can click it but nothing's happening. So what about, oh, because I got rid of my, no, yeah, I don't know why nothing is happening. But what we can actually do is disable that button anyway. So we can give it a disabled property, equal this to an object, and this is going to be form is valid, and save. And now if the form is not valid, that button should be not clickable. So disabled if the form is valid. We want it to be disabled if the form is not valid. So let's save that and see, and reload. And do we not have a disabled property on this button or something? Because why? Okay. Yeah, so we just need to add a style actually, because we haven't told it what that actually means. So here in our index.css, we have different styles, and we have different styles for our button. So we can add a button disabled class as well. And this should be instated if the button is disabled, if the button is disabled and hovered over, and hover, which is another dot. Okay, and then also if the button is disabled and active. So let's just copy this, paste, It's my slowest tabbing. And active. Well, that's not true. Another great hint for you coders out there is start doing typing lessons. One of the first things I start doing when I learned how to code is get up my typing skills, because it was really holding me back in the beginning, but not so much anymore. Thank the Lord. So we will just put this in here, and I just say these things freely, but whoever your Lord is, or if you don't have one, great, good for you. So not to bring religion into it, because that's not what I'm actually doing. It's my vocabulary, but thank the Lord anyway, But yes, whoever, whatever your beliefs are, certainly not encroaching on them, just so you know. We shouldn't have to say that, everyone can say, but I would like to say it, just to make sure that everybody knows what I say comes from a place of 100% respect for everybody, regardless of anything else. We're all just people here, and we should all help each other. There is one race, but the human race, that's literally all there is, like. So yeah, okay, so border color, anyway, that's all irrelevant. We're here to learn about coding. It's not irrelevant at all, actually. One love, one race. What's so wrong about saying that? But anyway, we'll continue here. So border color, if we go down to border color, perfect, and we just add in another hash symbol, and we're going to say the border color is grey, like this very light grey color, and then we'll also give the cursor not allowed. So that's super duper as well. I haven't seen this not allowed before. Not allowed. Oh, you are not allowed a cursor, sir. Take your cursor and go. It's not allowed around here. So now look, we can see if we now do some spaces. Well, cursor not allowed, it's turning into a hand. Or am I? Okay, there we go, brilliant. And then if we do space, 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 space. Look at that, isn't that fancy? You're not allowed. That's brilliant, actually. That is the best UI experience for a button. I'm definitely going to use a button cursor not allowed from now on when I am disabling a button, because it's very obvious, It's already obvious with the colours and stuff, but maybe not, Maybe there's somebody older who doesn't use websites every day, or very, very rarely, and they need to go on and get their passport updated, or, do something that's, they don't use the computer every day. This is very obvious that there's something wrong and you cannot click this button. And then but then how do we get our error message? Because then that tells them what they need to do in order to circumnavigate this particular issue. So we'll have to figure out now what Max is going to do in order to allow us to. And there we go. Look, the button just comes up. That's great. So what about if we just... So yeah, I just need to figure out how we're going to get this. Oh, because if we click anywhere else, is that how it works now? Which makes sense, I guess. So then if we do just space, we can't submit. That's pretty neat. I like that. I really like that, actually. Great. Cool. Okay, so he's just saying that we don't actually need use effect, because in here we're not doing anything special, anything that we need to. There's no effect happening after the fact. So I'll just keep listening here and tell you. Okay. Okay, so now we are taking stuff out. Okay, so we don't need to use effect. We can get rid of set form is valid. We're going to see another way to do this, just that cleans up the code a little bit, you know. So we can get rid of form is valid. Yeah, because all we're doing is deriving a new value for in here, true or false, which we've already got covered down here. So oh right, yeah, of course. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I thought he was going to go like a bit mad and completely change the approach, but he has not. So what he's done now is that rather than needing that extra state management variable, we can get rid of this use effect, because the effect isn't necessarily doing anything. We're not performing any effect after something has happened, you know. We're just coming in and using a variable, so we can do that in the general component. We don't need a use effect to do that. So here we'll declare just a normal variable called let is form valid, or form is valid. So you would presume that when the form is valid, this boolean will be set to true. So we'll start off with it set to false, which is indicating the form is not valid, and then we'll have an if statement, and we'll just pass in entered name is valid. So if entered name is valid, we will set form is valid to true, which makes sense. So now we have that boolean switching on and off in the exact same way. On the case that entered name is valid, we just had it in a use effect before, which wasn't necessary because we were doing sort of a simple thing. And then we could have an else here to say form is valid equals false, which is how you would imagine this to be set up. But actually, if you think about this now, we can shorten we can shorten this down even more, because if it already starts off at false, the initial state of the form is false, it's not true. The form is not valid when we start off. Then we come down to this next line and we're saying if the entered name is valid, which is the variable that's telling us whether or not the name is valid. We only have a name field, so that means therefore the whole form is valid. Sorry, my eyes are so that means then that the whole form is valid. Shish kebab. That means then that the whole form is valid. So only in the case that the entered name is valid are we going to switch this variable to true. So we can actually get rid of the else, because the else is saying in the else case, if the form is not valid, then set it to false. But sure, if the entered name is invalid, it never would have been set to true in the first place. So if the entered name is valid returns false, it doesn't come into this section of the code. It doesn't come in to this scoped if function that we're looking at here, because this evaluates to false. So it only comes in and executes the code within the if block. Excuse-moi, mis amigos. It only comes in here and executes. I mean, what was that? I'm sorry. Well, I shouldn't apologize. Maybe I should. Sorry. It only comes in here and executes this block of code if the entered name does in fact evaluate to true, aka the entered name is valid. It'll come in here and it will set the form is valid to true. In all other instances, it doesn't come in here, so form is valid remains false anyway. So we don't need that else there, because it's already false. If it hasn't come in here, it hasn't got set, and it remains false. So that's great, which you could practice by console logging it out here. You could do a console log, and then do form is valid 1 and comma, and just log that out there. Then you could do one within the if loop, just to sort of say this being set. Form is valid too, and I'll say within if statement. And then we will have another one down here and do form is valid 3 within else, let's say, because I'll add back in the else. And then we have form is valid again, so else. Let's open these up. Let's paste this down below. Let's add back in our console, or switching the variable here, so form. But we don't have to. Let's just leave the else there, because what we were going to do within the else was put it back to false. But you'll see now that there's no need to put it back to false because it remains false. So there we go. Look, when we first come in, we can see there is the form valid right now with nothing in it. We get it on the initial state, is the form valid, because it's just coming along and running this particular component. We've opened up the simple input component from our app.js, which is booted when we first open the application. So there's our simple input. So it goes and runs the code in this particular component. And as we can see, we come down here, we set the state, we get some variables ready, which are state tracking variables. We console log out entered name. We can see that being console logged. So this is the sequence that this is being performed in, line by line execution. Then we come down here, we've set this variable, entered name is valid if, depending on the white space, whether we have nothing entered. At the moment we have nothing entered, so we've got entered name, console logged out, there is nothing entered, so we get nothing at the moment. Then we have the name input is valid based on whether it was touched and whether the name is not valid. Then we come down here and we set form is valid to false, and we console log out form is valid 1. So we can see initially the form is not valid, which makes sense because we do not have an entered name is valid, and the entered name trimmed to an empty space. It does not equal. This evaluates to false. So our form is valid evaluates to false, right? So then if entered name was valid, this would be set to true. So this was skipped. We don't see any console log for number 2 here. It skipped this because entered name is valid evaluated to false, so it just came out of that block. And then down here it console logged out number 3 if form is valid within the else statement, and this is still just false. So we didn't need to reset that form is valid to false down here because it's already false on initialization, and only in the case that entered name is valid is true will it change to true. So we don't need to worry about resetting it. So now if I type in Lilly and click submit, let's see what happens now. Okay, so up here, right, so this is firing on every key press. So maybe we could use a use effect and set it to delay for 500 milliseconds, so that, it wouldn't fire on every single key press. It might fire just after half a second when you have the majority of your input put in, or, most of your name is in there. So we could actually use effect for that purpose. But here when we have the whole name in, right, we can see when we're first doing it, where is it set to true? I do not know. I cannot read the flow. I do not know what is going down in the town. Da-na-na-na. So it just doesn't seem to be true. What's going on? But then Lilly, let's try and just type this out again. Okay, so now it's true because that's clickable. Is it because we just set it back to false very quickly? I think so. So we can see that true value, I think, because when we submit this form, this is my guess because it is being set to true, right? Because once we submit that form, so yes, that's why. So we come in here, we come in at the top of our file where we run this code. So that code has been ran. We've logged out that the value was false, that our name was entered was this, and that the form is valid is false, and then within the if statement it's still false. So that's all been logged. Then we come along and hit the submit button. So when we hit the submit button, we come back and fire another function, which is the form submission handler, which sets, so see here on submit, which is linked to this on submit button. We have a submit button, a button within our form. This is telling us on submit, this is what we want to run. You put that on the form tag itself, on the form element. So then if we click form submission handler and come through to the function that fires in the event that we are submitting this form, we take in the event, the button click and what was put into this area here, because that's what we've passed up. We set the entered name touched to true. So we're saying that we have entered a name. We prevent the default action. We say if the entered name is not valid, just come out of this. So it comes out. It doesn't go back up to that top statement and run that again. Do you know, we've already ran that top piece of code. When we click the button, we're coming into this function and running this function. So then straight away we set the entered name to nothing, and we set the entered name touched to false. So you know, we don't come back and run the entire component again. We run the function connected to this button click, which is why we don't see these values change. So that was a very fruitless exercise, but maybe not fruitless, because now you understand how things are actually executing, that the app.js was bootstrapped up, that this is calling the simple input, how the simple input is being ran, and then also, do you know why we don't see this being changed to true? Because on submit, we're not running the whole component again. We're just running this function because that's what we've told it to do on click. This page has already been, bootstrapped up. So we can move on, or just like loaded. You know, this component has been, it's done its initial load. So unless we tell it that we want to run it up again, it's not going to do that. On the button click, we are telling it to run this function, not the whole component. So therefore, we can get rid of all of these console logs, because we learned what it is that we were demonstrated, what it was we were trying to demonstrate in a roundabout fashion. So I'll just get rid of this else. We probably see that there's some error there. Let's see what it is. So let's just save and reload. I've missed out a closing bracket, or else I should just get rid of the else and this opening bracket, but I just was curious to see what type of an error I'll get from this. So see, like sometimes it can be a little bit confusing, but do we have our line or anything? Export default? No. Wow. Like that's a confusing one. That's good to know. If you get some mad error, go and check all of collapse your code, check where your code ends. Oh my god, I would have been so lost in my previous place. Like the components were so long, so complex that if you were missing a bracket, like well, your IDE tells you as well. Your IDE does tell you, but do you know, it's easier looking at this little old thing. You can tell, right, so it just carries the error all the way down here. And then, so it doesn't tell you in your browser. This is a great learning experience, which is what they say, break your code, and that's how you figure out what's going on. So then with this semicolon here, if we hover over that, then we see the parser expected to find a closing bracket to match the open bracket on line 32. So brilliant. Like, you know, you didn't even get that. Oh, it's not even on line 32. But at least we got some. So it trickled all the way down here, and this is where it cut the error, you know. And only because we have a return statement, it seems. Maybe if we hadn't got a return statement here, you know, it wouldn't have even picked up on that there. And maybe it would have carried it even further down the chain. Yeah, no, simple JS. Simple input. On line 4. Oh yeah, when we're declaring our function. Alright. And 32 characters in. Gotcha, boss. So then we'll just go back up to where we were and get rid of actually the whole else. But that's very intriguing to see how that error played out there. I must make a mental note. I am hardwiring this in now. Your browser isn't going to tell you everything. Go through your code. Make sure that there's no red flags because there might be a red flag pointing you towards something, and then still you might not have the line. So, and such a silly mistake, you know, could get you into hours of trouble. So really trying to hammer that one home and keep myself out of trouble, because we don't like trouble here on this channel. We just like to learn and be good to people. So that's what we're going to do instead. No trouble. Keep ourselves out of trouble. So anyway, so then simple input and import and export may only appear, and just in saying that, like, we should all have loads of fun. You only live once. Go out and have all the fun you want to have. You know, enjoy yourself, but stay out of trouble. I think that's good advice, actually. So simple input.js import and export may only appear at the top level. Oh, so we have this fixed now. That's just because we hadn't closed off our bracket. So cool. Use effect is defined. Excuse him, what is defined but never used. Oh yes, so it is. I accept your warning, browser. So then if we reload, I can get rid of this entered name, because that's just hanging around telling us when we type in Lily, which isn't all that exciting. And let's continue. Okay, so Max is just telling us, this isn't difficult. I don't know why I'm saying and but just the pressure to get it right on the camera, which, come on, you know, I'm a coder, we're here to learn, and there is no wrong way. So we just do these things together and that's it, everything is fine. So he wants us now you'll hear it and you'll be like, oh come on, Leanne, I could do that in my sleep, Lily. So what we were going to do is add a second input, and what we want to do with the second input is just create an email field and do the exact same thing. So all we have to do is copy the code realistically, but let's try and think through this logically, you know, and do it in a logical fashion as opposed to yeah, so we want to make sure we do this in a logical way. So the first thing I'm going to start with is adding the input for the email, you know. That seems like the most logical place to start off. So first of all, we will copy this input and we will paste it down below. Actually, we don't just need the input, we need the input and the label. So see, this is just the input itself. And then we have the label, which is also for the name. And then we have this wrapping div. And the wrapping div is telling us that, you know, that this is all part of the name. So this all needs to come together. Okay. One moment, just checking something. So perfect. So we'll just do the logical thing and instead copy this entire area, you know. So perfect. So we'll copy the whole div and copy and paste it down below. Down below the country road. Lord. So, okay, so we're going to call this email input class. I should come up with a better, like sometimes when I laugh as well, I say, oh, stop. And I thought, you know, I don't want to stop laughing, so I should change that too. Continue. Continue. You know, rather than be like, oh, stop. It's just like a natural thing, but actually the last thing I want to do is stop laughing, so who knows. Anyway, very relevant, more ramblings from Lily, but yep, whoever's coming here must like the ramblings because it's part and parcel of coming to code with Lily, I'm afraid. Oh, very funny. I have the 100 days, why you should do 100 days video, and looking back at it is actually a little bit painful. Like, I'm such a rambler, like just talking, rambling, waffling on, oh Lord. But look, you know, this is just me being me, so I hope some people like it, but I'm actually going to put out a way shorter version of that. And I'm sure in time, like as more and more people watch it, if everyone is complaining, Jesus, she doesn't stop rambling, well then I can look at it. But for now, I'm just being totally myself, and actually I don't want to doctor that in any way. I just want to come on, try and be myself, and well, not try and be myself, be myself, try and be professional, don't be too like stick to the point. Even though that's not what I'm doing, so I'm just being myself, that's all I'm doing, guys. So either you like me or you don't, and you know, I like all of you irrespective, so it's all good. So then we'll come down here to text, and our ID is going to be email in here. So that's great. So now we have a new input. So let's start this logically, right? So we have our div with our class name, email input class. Then our label, HTML4, this is going to be email. Then we have your email. Our input type is still a text. We have an ID of email on it, and then our input handlers are going to be for the email. So we have an email input blur handler and an email input name change. Email input change handler. So email input change handler. I mean, surely that could just be email blur handler, email change handler. Let's leave it input because it is the input coming in. So let's just leave it input for the moment. And then down here we will have email input is valid. Please enter a valid. Oh no. Sorry guys. Don't like the phone going off. Do you know what I mean? Normally I keep it far away when I'm in work. I hate having it on me. I don't like it anywhere near. But I haven't started work yet, and normally nobody talks to me, so I'm safe. But all of a sudden, I'm a bit popular. Don't know what's going on. So then, well, I do know what's going on. I'm just popular all of a sudden. No, I'm only messing. I'm joking. So then, just got a text message, like it's not a big deal. So then we'll just enter a valid email and say email must be in email format. Enter a valid email address. Email. Oh, come on. You having a laugh, love? Email must be a valid email. Enter a email address. Enter a valid email address. There you go. That's all you need to say. Short and simple. Unlike my ramblings. No, what are you messing? Well, take it as you will. So we will save this file now, and then that's looking good. So we have our input set up. So if we actually go back, so because we don't have these things in at the moment, so just to show you, because I would like to show you, so I'll comment this out for the moment. I will cut these out of the input because I don't think you can comment things in the middle of an input. You can. And then I will also move this down, comment this, just to get rid of that class name, and close this div standalone. So now we're not referring to anything. Oh, that didn't like that. Oh no. So let's have a look. Alright. So now if we save, we shouldn't be trying to access anything here that we do not have. Reference email input classes is not defined. Let's reload this page because I don't think it should be picking up on that anymore. Hey baby. Da-na-na-na. So let's actually leave the class back up there and put the class name the same as the name just until we create our email name input classes, because we don't have any of those classes yet in our index CSS. So if we come in here, we can see we've got different things going on for the different form controls. So just form control input, that should already manage our name and our email. So do we have specific classes for the name? Surely we do, because otherwise why have we given it this name, class name of name input class? Okay, so we are just switching if it's valid or invalid. So this should still just be a form box, a form input, part of the form, and our CSS is targeting all of the form items here. So therefore we should still get that same CSS. So we can see on a form control label, on a form control input, you know. So if I reload, email input class is giving out about, because I put that back. So yeah, oh yeah, so I want to make this name input class just to try and apply the same styles, and that did it. Okay, great. So now we can see without doing anything, and then if I get rid of that, because all the name, oh yes, okay, so all the name input class was doing was adding invalid. No, it wasn't. It was also adding this class form control. So instead of calling this name input classes, we can actually just call this, oh no we can't, because it's doing a little ditty here for us. So actually we cannot change this to email, because this is specifically related to the name, whether the name input is valid or not, and it is then doing a ternary. So in the case that it is invalid, we're applying the classes form control and invalid, and in the case that it is valid, we are just adding form control, and then that's what links up to our file here. So although we don't have a name input class here, we have got form control, and that's what's defining all of that CSS for us with regards to the form, so that we get this visual. We have a nice visual, whereas if we went back to how it was before, just off the bat it looks a little bit crap. You know, it does though. So actually we'll just get rid of this altogether, because we don't have an email input class. So if we just get rid of that, save, we don't have that styling being applied, because we haven't applied the form control class in the case that it is true or false. Whether it's valid or invalid, we still have form control, and form control is what is just showing all of that nice styling. That's just giving the, so we have like styling on the label to make the font bold, to make the margin 0.5 rem. So we can see here the font is bold, and we have this little margin underneath. You know, we've given it something to make this box thicker. So all of this is just CSS that we've applied. So if we go back to the way we were, change this back to name, just to get that visual again, and save that. Look at that. So we have our input box set up. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to validate anything. That's all it does. And yeah, we don't actually get any. So we can see we have added the invalid class. We have the orange and the red coming on because the invalid class is doing that bit. So if I type in a valid name here, and if I just leave this blank, in what instance was this? So once we submit then, okay, then we get the email. And why is that on submit? Because we are waiting for this particular variable to either be evaluated true or false before we apply this class. So that's why it wasn't just working like if I just get rid of something, or you know, and now it's just stuck here because this is reliant on this becoming valid, and if this is invalid, then both of them become invalid. And if there's text in there, it goes, or if you click on it, it goes orange, and then if you don't click on it, it goes red. So this is just all the CSS associated with this invalid class, which is being evaluated on the name input is invalid. So if I now remove all of this text, and just leave it, and click away, click outside, it doesn't reset the state of this, because this is the box that we are relying on to reset the state of the second one, because that's what we've told it. That's how we've told it to add this invalid class. So we're going to have to add our own classes for the email to do a similar validation. And then in the case that the email box is invalid, it will only be linked to that one box, because that's what makes more sense. It shouldn't be relying on the validation of another input box. I can't really think of any example where you might want that to happen off the top of my head. I'm sure there are certainly use cases, but for our use case here, we want these to be independently managed and validated. We can still combine the state, tracking the state of these two things in one state object perhaps, because they are very tightly coupled and tightly linked. We can track the state together, but we do want the validation to be for the email on the email box and for the name on the name box, because that makes the most sense. So I hope that makes sense to you too. And we're going to leave it there for today, guys. I think we've made some great progress today. I enjoyed having the chats with you. I hope you enjoyed it too. And if you did, please do like and subscribe. It means the world to me. And I hope you have an absolutely phenomenal day. And go outside and take a look at a bird. I love the birds and the grass and whatever. Maybe you don't have grass where you live. Look at the sky. There's always clouds. Or maybe there's no clouds, but even just the sky is nice. So wherever you are, I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you for spending this time with me, Lilly Code. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you, guys. Adios, amigos.